Your father is suffocating us, Derek. I want him out of this house by the end of the month. I don't care where he goes." Those were my daughter-in-law's exact words, spoken through the thin wall separating my bedroom from the hallway. I stood perfectly still in the dark, one hand resting on my dresser, and listened to my son say nothing in response. That silence told me everything I needed to know. Before I go any further, let me back up 2 years. Because what happened that Tuesday night in March didn't come out of nowhere. It was the conclusion of a test I'd been running since the day I handed my son a check for $60,000 and watched him pocket it without reading the attached paperwork. My name is Raymond. I'm 64 years old. For 31 years, I built a commercial roofing company in Phoenix, Arizona, from a single truck and a borrowed ladder into a 20-employee operation with contracts across 3 counties. When my knees started giving me trouble and my doctor started mentioning blood pressure at every appointment, I sold Walker Roofing Solutions to a regional construction group out of Tucson. They paid me $7.4 million on a Wednesday afternoon in September. I signed the papers, shook hands, and drove to a steakhouse alone to eat a ribeye and think about what came next. What came next, it turned out, was Derek calling me 3 weeks later. "Dad, Sandra and I found a house." His voice had that careful optimism of someone asking for something they expect to be refused. "It's perfect. 3 bedrooms, good school district, 2-car garage. But we're short on the down payment. I hate to even ask, but how much do you need?" $60,000. I told him I'd see what I could manage. I went to my attorney the next morning and had him draw up a promissory note. $60,000 at 4% annual interest, 5-year term with an acceleration clause I never mentioned to Derek. Then I wrote the check and told my son it was a gift. Told him the paperwork was just for my own record keeping. He signed without reading a single line. Sandra cried grateful tears at the kitchen table and hugged me twice. That was the first data point. The second came 6 months later, when Derek mentioned the house needed foundation repairs, and Sandra mentioned in the same conversation that their savings were completely wiped out. I offered to move in with them, sold my condo, told them I'd cashed out everything to simplify my retirement, and started paying $2,500 a month toward household expenses. I framed myself as the grateful father who needed family nearby, the aging widower who couldn't quite manage alone since Derek's mother passed. What I was actually doing was watching. I kept my real finances tucked inside a private banking relationship with a woman named Carol Briggs at a wealth management firm downtown. Carol had managed my money through the sale, through the investment period, through 3 years of quiet compounding. The balance when I moved into Derek and Sandra's spare bedroom was $8,940,000. I checked it on my phone every Sunday morning while they slept in. The spare bedroom was the smallest room in the house I'd helped them buy. It fit a full-sized bed, a nightstand, and a narrow dresser. Sandra had decorated it in a style I came to think of as actively unwelcoming. No curtains, one overhead light with a buzzing ballast, a closet door that wouldn't close all the way. I made no complaints. I was a data collector, not a tenant. 2.5 years in, the data was nearly complete. My granddaughter Emma, 7 years old, Derek's daughter from his first marriage, who split her time between our house and her mother's, was the only uncomplicated thing in that home. She would climb into my lap after school and tell me about her teacher, about a girl named Priya, who was her best friend, about a book she was reading about horses. Sandra tolerated Emma the way she tolerated me, with a politeness so thin you could see straight through it. The night I overheard the conversation, Emma was at her mother's. Derek had worked late. Sandra had made dinner for 2 and left mine in the refrigerator with plastic wrap over the plate. I ate alone in the kitchen, washed my own dish, and went to my room to read. I was just reaching for my lamp when I heard their voices in the hallway. "Your father has been here for 2.5 years. Sandra's voice was controlled, precise, like someone who had rehearsed this. This was supposed to be temporary. "He's fine, Sandra. He pays. $2,500. The contempt in her voice could have stripped paint. "Do you know what it costs to run this house? Between the mortgage and utilities and groceries. He doesn't cover half his presence here. And emotionally, he drains me, Derek. Every day I come home and he's sitting in my living room like he owns it." I set my book down carefully. "He's my father," Derek said. The weakness in his voice was familiar by now, but it still landed somewhere tender. "And I'm your wife. Who comes first?" Silence. "I've made my decision. I want him gone. Find him an apartment. Find him a retirement community. I don't care. He can afford it. He has his social security and whatever's left from the condo sale. It's time he figured out his own situation instead of depending on us. Sandra. I'm done discussing it, Derek. Tell him by the end of the week. He has 30 days. I heard her walk down the hall. Heard Derek stand motionless for a long moment before following her. I sat in the dark for a while. Then I picked up my phone, opened the banking app, and looked at the number Carol had sent me in the weekly summary that morning. $9,216,412. I set the phone down and started making a list. By 6 the next morning, I had contacted 3 real estate agents in the Scottsdale area. By 9, I had scheduled 4 property viewings. By noon, I had called Carol and asked her to prepare a transfer of $800,000 into my primary checking account. She asked if everything was all right. I told her I was upgrading my living situation. Derek found me in the kitchen that evening, standing at the counter with a cup of coffee. He looked like a man walking to a doctor's appointment he'd already been dreading for weeks. "Dad," he exhaled, "I need to talk to you about something." "I know," I said. "Sandra wants me out by the end of the month." His face went through 5 expressions in 2 seconds. "You heard us. The walls are thin." I took a sip of coffee. "Don't worry about it, Derek. I'll make arrangements." He looked relieved, which told me more than anything he could have said. "It's not, I want you to know. It's not about you specifically. Sandra just feels like she needs her space, her home. It's fine." I set down my mug and met his eyes. "I understand completely." Something in my tone made him hesitate. "Are you sure you're okay? Do you need help finding a place? Because we could?" "I'll manage," I said. "I always have." I had 17 viewings over the next 10 days. The property that stopped me was a Scottsdale home in a gated community near the McCormick Ranch golf course. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, vaulted ceilings, a backyard with a pool, and a covered patio, mature desert landscaping. The previous owners had relocated to Portland. It had been sitting empty for 3 weeks. Listed at $780,000. I stood in the entry hall listening to the agent explain the custom kitchen cabinets and thought about the room with the buzzing light and the closet door that wouldn't close. "I'd like to make an offer today," I said. "Full asking price, cash. I can close in a week." The agent's professionalism faltered for exactly 1 second. "Cash? I'm not most buyers," I said pleasantly. "Let's talk paperwork." I left Derek and Sandra's house on a Tuesday morning. Derek had already gone to work. Sandra was home, upstairs, and made no effort to come down. I left a note on the kitchen counter next to an envelope containing my final $2,500. "Sandra and Derek, thank you for the past 2.5 years. I found new housing and will be out by noon. I know you needed your space, your home. I've always understood that completely. The envelope is this month's contribution. Ray." The moving company I'd hired arrived at 8 sharp. 4 men, 3 hours, and everything I owned was loaded and gone. I did a final walk through the spare bedroom, pulled down the one photograph I'd kept on the nightstand, Emma at the Grand Canyon, squinting into the sun, grinning. I wrapped it in a shirt and tucked it into my carry bag. I locked the front door and dropped the key through the mail slot. The drive to Scottsdale took 22 minutes. My gate code opened to a long driveway lined with desert willow trees. The movers were already there. I stood in my new kitchen while they unloaded, watching morning light move across the stone countertops. My house, my kitchen, my light. The first text from Derek arrived at 4 that afternoon. "Got your note. Hope you're settling in okay. Let me know if you need anything." 15 words. I counted them. Then I set the phone face down and finished unpacking my books. The call I'd been planning for 2 weeks happened that Friday. I had an 8 o'clock appointment with a man named Thomas Hartley, an estate and asset attorney I'd worked with during the business sale. His office was in a Scottsdale high-rise with a view of Camelback Mountain. He was 60, silver-haired, unhurried, and had never once asked me a question I wasn't ready to answer. "I want to update my estate plan," I told him. "And I want my son to receive a full disclosure of my assets. Not from me directly, from you." Thomas studied me over his reading glasses. "You want maximum impact. I want him to understand what the last 2.5 years cost him." Thomas made notes. "I'll call him this week. Schedule a meeting before the end of the month. One more thing, I said. Pull the promissory note from my file. I want to review the acceleration clause. He found it in under 90 seconds. 60,000 in principal, 2.5 years of compounded interest at 4%, miscellaneous fees. He ran the numbers on his calculator. Total balance due if you invoke the clause today, he said, is approximately $68,400. Draw up the demand letter, I said. Certified mail, 90 days. Derek sat across from Thomas 3 weeks later. I know this because Thomas called me that evening with a full account. He'd started professionally, offered water, waited for Derek to settle, then slid the first document across the desk, my investment portfolio summary, my name at the top, current balance in large print. Derek stared at it. There must be a mistake, he said. My father sold his business, but he lived with us. He needed help. Thomas slid the second document across. Bank statements. The business sale records. $7.4 million. Right there in black and white. Your father mentioned his monthly contributions to your household, Thomas said. $2,500 monthly, over 30 months. He wanted you to understand that those contributions were his choice, not his necessity. Derek's mouth moved without sound. Your father's current net worth, Thomas continued, is approximately $9.2 million. He has never required financial assistance of any kind. According to Thomas, Derek sat completely still for 90 seconds. Then he said, very quietly, he was testing us. I can't speak to his intentions, Thomas said. What I can tell you is that previously you were listed as primary beneficiary of his estate. He is now reconsidering that designation. He'll contact you when he's ready. Thomas also told me what happened in the parking garage. Derek sat in his car for 11 minutes before calling Sandra. Thomas's office faced the garage. He watched the whole thing. The call went something like this. Based on the voicemail Derek left me at 6 that evening, frantic, fragmented, barely coherent. Dad, I just left Thomas Hartley's office. I don't even know what to say. $9 million. You were testing us, and we, Sandra. When she finds out, please call me back. Please. I didn't call back, but I did listen to the voicemail 4 times. The demand letter arrived by certified mail on a Thursday. I know the exact moment Derek opened it because he called me 3 times in 10 minutes. I watched the calls roll to voicemail. His text started arriving an hour later. Dad, I got a letter from your attorney. Is this real? $68,000? We don't have this. You know we don't have this. I'm not angry. I understand why you're doing this. I just need to talk to you. Please. Sandra's texts were different. Shorter, angrier. Raymond, this is Sandra. Whatever Derek did to upset you, this is not the answer. We have a family. We have a child in this house. Please reconsider. I deleted them both. They started showing up at my gate 6 days after the demand letter. I'd been expecting it. Sandra drove. I recognized the car from down the block, circling twice before stopping across the street. I watched from my living room window as they got out and stood on the sidewalk staring at my house. I had purchased this house in 9 days with a check. They had no idea. I gave them 4 minutes. Then I buttoned my shirt, checked my reflection, and walked to the front door. They were standing at my gate when I opened it. Derek looked hollowed out. Sandra had clearly prepared something. Her expression was composed, careful, strategic. Ray, she said, stepping forward, we need to talk. Whatever has happened between us, we can fix this. The kids, Emma is one person, I said. Not kids. Let's not use her as a number. Sandra's composure flickered. Emma misses you. She keeps asking when she's going to see you again. You know how much she loves you. I know exactly how much Emma loves me, I said. What I didn't know until recently was how much you did. That's not fair, Derek started. We gave you a home when you needed one. I want you to hear something. I kept my voice completely level. Your father needed you. Sandra told you I was suffocating the two of you, and you said nothing, not one word. The color drained from her face. I was in my room. The walls are thin. I let that settle. I heard every word, Sandra. He drains me. Tell him by the end of the week. Those were yours. Derek looked at his wife. Something passed between them that I didn't have the energy to decode. We made mistakes, Sandra said. her voice dropping half an octave. We were selfish, ungrateful. I was stressed about money, and I took it out on you. And that was wrong. Yes, I said. It was. Can we come inside? Talk like family? I considered the word. You gave me 30 days to leave your home. I left in 10. I've always been efficient. I paused. What do you actually want? Derek stepped closer to the gate. We want to fix things, Dad. The letter, the attorney, the demand. Notice we're not going to pretend we don't understand why. But we don't have $68,000. I know that. Then why? Because you needed to understand that what you did had a cost, I said. You made a calculation that I was worth less than my inconvenience. I'm showing you what that calculation actually cost. We'll pay it back, Sandra said. Whatever you need, a payment plan, we'll. This isn't a negotiation, I said. Thomas Hartley will send you my terms next week. Read them carefully this time. I turned and walked back toward my front door. Dad, Derek's voice caught. Did you ever actually need us, or was it always a test? I stopped with my hand on the door, turned back. I needed to know if you were capable of treating another human being with basic dignity when there was nothing obvious in it for you. I looked at him steadily. I didn't need the roof over my head, Derek. I needed the answer. I have it now. The door closed behind me. Thomas sent the terms 8 days later. 5 conditions, non-negotiable. 1. They would pay $40,000 everything they'd managed to scrape together as partial satisfaction of the debt. The remaining $28,000 would be forgiven. 2. Derek and Sandra would attend couples therapy for a minimum of 6 months, documentation required. 3. My will, as currently written, would stand. Charitable foundations would receive the majority of the estate. A protected trust for Emma, accessible at 25, would hold $2 million. Derek and Sandra, collectively, would receive $50,000, not each. Total, 4. Sandra would write Emma a letter not to be sent, but to be given to Thomas and held in file, acknowledging what she had said and done, and why it was wrong. 5. No contact attempts outside of scheduled structured visits for a period of 90 days. Derek called Thomas the morning the terms arrived. Can he really do this? He asked. Just give everything to charity and leave us $50,000 from $9 million? In Arizona, Thomas said, a competent adult may distribute their estate as they see fit. Your father is in excellent health, managing his own finances, and has made every decision independently and with counsel. You have no legal recourse. We're his family. Yes. Which is why he's offering terms at all. They accepted within 48 hours. Thomas told me Derek's voice on the phone was flat and controlled, like a man who had finished grieving and moved into something quieter and harder. Emma called me from Derek's phone on a Sunday afternoon, about 3 weeks into the 90-day quiet period. She'd found my number in her dad's contacts. Grandpa Ray. Her voice was small. Why don't you come over anymore? Did I do something? No, sweetheart. I walked to the window. You didn't do a single thing wrong. Grown-ups are working through some complicated stuff. It has nothing to do with you. Priya's grandpa comes over every Sunday for dinner. I told her mine used to too. Used to is a particular kind of knife when a 7-year-old uses it. I'm going to see you soon, I said. I promise. We'll do pancakes. You pick the place. The one with the cactus on the sign? That's the one. After she hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. Then I called Thomas and told him I wanted to add a provision to Emma's trust, a supplemental education fund, accessible by her alone for approved academic expenses starting at 18, another $500,000. You're not cutting the grandchild out, Thomas observed. She didn't do anything wrong. Neither did you. Neither did I agreed. But the people who did something wrong are her parents, and she has to keep living with them. The least I can do is make sure her future stays separate from their consequences. The structured visits started after the 90 days. I met Emma at the pancake restaurant with the cactus sign. She came with Derek, who sat at a separate table with his coffee, and gave us our space without being asked. That small thing, not hovering, not inserting himself, just giving his daughter room to be with her grandfather, was the first thing he'd done that made me think the therapy might actually be working. Emma ordered blueberry pancakes and told me everything that had happened in 3 months. Priya had gotten a hamster named Cheese. Her class had done a solar system project. She had lost her 2 front teeth. She showed me the gaps proudly. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Only the second one." She touched it experimentally. The first one came out when I was eating a granola bar, and I didn't even notice until I tasted blood. I'd missed that. I would have liked to have been there for the granola bar tooth, which was a strange thing to grieve. Before Derek took her home, he stopped at my table. "Dad!" He didn't sit down, just stood there, hands in his pockets. "I'm not going to ask you to change the will or the terms or any of it. I just want you to know the therapy is helping. We're doing the work, not because of the estate, because I didn't know who I'd become until all of this showed me." I looked at him. "Actions," I said, "over time. That's the only currency I'm accepting now." He nodded. "Fair." He collected Emma, who hugged me for an extra 3 seconds, and said very seriously, "Same place next week?" And I said yes, same place. By early summer, I had established something that felt, quietly and incrementally, like a life. I mentored a young contractor named Marcus 2 mornings a week through a small business incubator downtown. He reminded me of myself at 32. All drive and no capital, learning what the business schools don't teach. I walked 3 miles each morning before the Phoenix heat made it unreasonable. I read. I had coffee with Thomas occasionally. I kept my Sunday banking reviews. In July, Thomas called to tell me Derek and Sandra had completed 4 months of therapy, and Sandra had submitted the letter for Emma. He didn't read it to me, it wasn't for me, but he told me it was 3 pages long and she had rewritten it twice. "Do you believe her?" I asked. He considered this. "I believe she's afraid," he said. "Whether fear becomes change is a different question. That's for time to answer." One evening in August, I was sitting on my back patio, watching the sun go down behind the McDowell Mountains, the sky going the particular purple-orange that only happens in the Arizona desert. My coffee had gone cold. I was reading an old paperback, and not reading it, really, just holding it while I thought. I had spent 2.5 years in a room smaller than my current bathroom, handing over money I didn't need to spend, making myself invisible to people who had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a line item. I had done it to know the truth. The truth had cost me things I wasn't entirely done paying for: Emma's blueberry pancakes, 3 months of Sunday dinners, the granola bar tooth. None of that came back. But I was sitting in my own chair, on my own patio, under my own desert sky, and no one's voice was coming through any walls. I picked up my phone and texted Emma a photograph I'd taken that afternoon, a Gambel's quail with 7 tiny chicks lined up behind her like a feathered freight train wobbling through the yard. Her response came back in 40 seconds, a string of exclamation points, a chicken emoji, and the words, "I want to come see them." I wrote back, "Next Sunday. Bring your appetite." She sent back a smiley face that was all teeth. I set the phone down and went back to watching the light change. The mountains were going dark at their bases first, shadow climbing upward while the peaks stayed bright. I'd watched this same view happen over 30 years of Arizona evenings, and it had never once looked like anything other than a gift. I had built something from nothing, lost the people I thought I knew, found out who they actually were, paid the price for the knowledge, and decided it was worth it. The sick, old, suffocating man they wanted gone. I sat in his chair, in his house, under his sky, and for the first time in a long time, I felt exactly like myself. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below and tell me, where are you watching from today? Don't forget to subscribe to Pure Revenge Stories for new stories every week. The next one is already waiting for you.